Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host, Mr. Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. Welcome in, Keith.
Welcome. So this is going to be a show that's a little different than the past because what we're going to do today is Bill is going to do his best and likely fail to convince me that this season is not already over. I mean, at 2-3, things are definitely, you can turn them around, but not without your starting quarterback for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So, Bill, what do you got for me?
Okay.
Because I am not feeling it. I am not feeling hopeful in any way.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on. You've got to be, you're an optimist.
I am.
Nature.
I'm an optimist by nature, but the team has the worst, they have the worst defense in the league statistically. And
I think that's the more important factor, to be completely honest with you.
And now they lose all of the explosiveness offensively because they don't have their quarterback. Show me a path.
I think that they lose.
This team.
I think they lose 75% of it. I don't think that they lose 100% of it. So I think that we're going to be okay as long as the defense plays better. And the way that I want the offense set up and to play, I think it helps the defense. So let's talk about it and let's try to figure it out and still be friends afterwards.
Well, we don't have to worry about that. But no, you just said it yourself. So you're going to lose 75% of your offensive explosiveness because you lost the quarterback.
Right.
But that was the only thing.
Yes.
This is a team that was 2-3.
That was the only thing that was propping this
offense.
team up. It was. But now we have Geno Smith.
Yes.
And now they're going to ask
don't have
Geno
any
Smith.
Explosiveness.
They're going to ask Geno Smith to run this offense within the offense as it was designed, rather than trying to extend a bunch of explosive plays. And maybe, just maybe, that will be the factor that helps this offense kind of come into its own a little bit and play within itself. Let the players kind of play without having to depend on Russell Wilson and the plus 20-yard completions to keep this team alive, as opposed to possibly being more of a Jared Goff, if you will, type offense where it's hyper efficiency increases, their conversion rates on third down increases, their time of possession increases. They depend a little bit more on the running game. Get Chris Carson going and kind of ride that a little bit. Convert your third down opportunities. You're going to dink, dunk, screen, and run this way to kind of methodically marching down the field. And you're going to have to do it drive after drive after drive. You're going to have to score points when you do that. You're going to depend on your kicker, Jason Myers, a little bit more.
Which has been an adventure the last couple of games.
Well, and you're going to try by creating a time of possession advantage to keep your defense off the field, another 2 or 3 drives a game that they're currently on the field. So you're going to reduce the opportunities that they're going to have to be out there to give up all those yards and to allow points to be scored. So for me, now it's a perfect case scenario. I realize that it's not like this is the greatest thing, but this is what we've got. And I think that gives the team the opportunity, the best opportunity as a team, not just as a single player in Russell Wilson, but as a team to go out and win games. And I think given the schedule, and you have to admit the schedule that we've already faced has been fairly brutal. And the schedule that is coming up is a little bit more forgiving. So all those factors, and we can get into the depth of all that, but that's the gist of what I'm trying to come up with today to convince you that we possibly have a shot to go 3-2 in the next 5.
That's going to be a tall order because
I think in order to salvage the season, you gotta have 3 wins in the next 5 in order to even be in a conversation after that.
This is a team that's giving up points on, I believe it's 72% of the opposing team's drives. So you can keep them off the field a little bit more, and that's going to decrease the stats in terms of maybe number of points and number of yards and all of that, because the other team's getting fewer drives. But unless they're scoring on a lower percentage of drives, it doesn't matter. Because if you're cutting down the number of possessions the other team has,
I think
you're not in. It's not like you're increasing the number of possessions your team has.
I think it does help. I think it does help, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. A, you're eliminating, say, 2 or 3 possessions a game from the opposing offenses.
True.
Statistically, that's significant, and statistically, that is giving your defense an opportunity to find success in a lower amount of exposure opportunities.
You're also giving your offense fewer possessions by doing that, though. That's the thing.
But you're sustaining those possessions and hopefully converting more of those possessions into points, thereby increasing your efficiency.
But if you're dinking and dunking, you're not. We've seen that.
It's a fine line, Keith.
As teams play Seattle.
What is the alternative? I've really thought about this. What is the alternative to doing that? The alternative is to hope Geno Smith turns into Russell Wilson. That's not going to happen.
That isn't what we're trying to do here. You're right. He's never going to turn into Russell Wilson. He's not. But you're trying to convince me that this team is going to win games when they can't stop anyone, and now they lose their quarterback.
Let's take a look at the defense.
What's the path? What's the path to actually winning games when you can't stop
This
anyone?
is going to have to happen on both sides of the ball, and it was going to have to happen on both sides of the ball, regardless of whether Russell Wilson or not is the quarterback. And we both realize that the defense is dismal and is in bad straits. And I'm just saying this is one of the ways that I am constructing that also helps the offense kind of get through this 4 or 5, 6 game stretch that gives them the best opportunity to keep going, give their playmakers opportunities to make plays still, and Geno Smith is serviceable. On the other side of the ball, Keith, that's just a completely separate equation. I'm just trying to eliminate some opponent opportunities, but the defense, you're right, it still needs to step up. Now at 2-3 in 5 games, including 3 losses, Seahawks have allowed 450 yards per game, dead last in the NFL. They tied a league record by surrendering 450 yards of offense for the 4th consecutive game, last game. Only the 4th time that's happened since the NFL-AFL merger. And they're on pace to yield 7,776 yards of total offense for the 2021 season with the extra game. So you're not going to hear any pushback from me on this defense is completely horrible. I totally get that. The question is, could we have won games with Russell Wilson at quarterback? Would it have mattered?
Yes, of course it's going to matter.
Okay, so
because you can keep up with a bad defense by being a good offense and
but we haven't shown that we can't even do that. We can't even do that.
But they have done that. I don't understand what you're saying.
In 2 games, in 2 wins, yes, they've done that, Keith.
No, they also did. They also did that in the 2 losses that Russell Wilson played in, where they put up a pile of points, got up early, and then the defense just could not get off the field. And Russell Wilson had 3 possessions in the entire second half.
That's all I'm saying is you've got to somehow flip that script. You cannot continue to rely on that playbook, if you will, to go out and try to win games. We've won 2 out of 5 in that formula. So what I'm saying is that formula sucks. It no longer works, and Russell Wilson is out of the equation. So now that Russell Wilson's out of the equation, that takes that completely off the table. So we're not even going to go there because it's just not available. So now what do? We have Geno Smith, completely different style of quarterback, but he's got a style that actually does fit into the Shane Waldron type of scheme. If you really break the Waldron scheme down and you take a look at Jared Goff as a quarterback, I know Jared Goff, I get it, but the Rams were successful in having Jared Goff manage that team. They had a good defense on the back end. Not great, though. If you look at their defense in the last couple of years, it's been okay, but it's not been like world beater stuff.
When the Jared Goff took them to the Super Bowl, they had one of the best defenses in the NFL.
I'm not talking about going to the Super Bowl. I don't think the Super Bowl is realistic for this team at all. What I'm saying is, can we get into it as a wild card with 10 wins?
When Jared Goff took them to the playoffs.
Is this season salvageable?
Last year, the Rams were a top 5 defense, and Goff got them into the playoffs.
One of the reasons why they're top 5 is not just because personnel; it's because the offense had time of possession. I think they were 2nd or 3rd in the NFL in time of possession at the end of the year. That's a hell of a gift to give your defense. It just is.
But you're okay. You're looking at look at it points per possession. How about that? Points per possession, because that's a great way to
equalize things. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And in points per possession, that Rams defense was still really good last year. And so, yeah, they were able to make it work with Jared Goff at quarterback because they had an elite defense. The Seahawks have the exact opposite of an elite defense. They've got probably the worst defense in the NFL.
But not
so
not
how are you
personnel-wise.
How are you making it work with Jared Goff at quarterback when you don't have the elite defense?
Well, let's just talk about the defense. Let's leave the offense alone for 10 minutes. Let's talk about the defense.
Is that just because we've got 10 minutes left of the show?
No, we got 20, 25 minutes. We can go a little long in this show. This is kind of a special week because we had an early game this week or last week. Let's just talk about some players on the defense. Let's talk about the coaching. Let's talk about what's going on with the defense, because that seems to be worse than the offense. It is, even with
Russell
Geno
Wilson,
Smith as quarterback, the defense is really the conversation. Now, obviously, we're going to have a conversation about the offense, because I don't know that your pessimism was at this level pre-Russell Wilson getting hurt and coming out of this game. He may have been a factor in the game. We may have won the game. We just don't know. But your pessimism now is over the top with Geno Smith, and I'm just curious as to why. Because it seems
Russell,
like the defense is still the problem.
Because Russell Wilson is good enough and explosive enough as an athlete, as a playmaker, as everything. Russell Wilson is good enough to hide a lot of warts, and we've been watching him do that for the last few years.
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we?
Where we've had a bunch of bad teams overall, and Wilson's kind of just hid a lot of that and
Keith,
allowed
what
the
if
team
we win the
games.
next 3 games with Geno Smith at quarterback, and it turns out that it's the offense that won the games? What is that going to do to that equation?
It's
of Russell Wilson being hero ball, needing him to win games.
That equation is going to be written into a fantasy novel, because it's the only place where it will ever be true. So you're asking this what if thing that's literally impossible.
No, it's not.
Yes,
it is not impossible. It
so
is not impossible.
You're going to sit here and tell me that Geno Smith is a significantly better quarterback than Russell Wilson.
No, I'm not. Geno.
Yeah, you are.
That's no, I'm not. It's different.
That's the only way that happens.
To ask him to win in a different way.
Then you're asking.
I'm going to ask him to win by dinking and dunking and screening and running. I'm going to ask him to be Jared Goff 2020. This is the only equation that works. I'm not going to ask him to be Russell Wilson to try to go play hero ball at the end of the game.
That's the only equation where the offense works, is you have to do it in that way. But in that sense, you're not winning games because of your offense.
Correct. Absolutely.
Which is the part that you just said. You just said that the offense.
I'm not asking Geno Smith to go out and win games when he's playing.
In your
I'm
what if, it was
saying
what
that-
if they win the next three, and it's
What if
because,
they win the next three?
and it is because the offense that they win,
Because
and
because of the offense, because of the different way that they were asked to play works.
you're
and
not
they
dinking
actually
and dunking.
had success.
You aren't dinking
in
and dunking
Shane
your way
Waldron's
to a win.
offense
You aren't
by-
dinking and dunking your way to a win.
by
It doesn't
tempo,
happen.
getting the ball out quickly, running the ball successfully, playing within the offense that that was brought in here. If Russell Wilson wasn't the quarterback and they didn't depend on those deep throws as part of the offense. So take Jared Goff and put him on the 2021 Seattle Seahawks. This is kind of what we have for the next 5 weeks.
Jared Goff and you put him on the 2021 Seahawks, you have a 5-12 team that needs to rebuild. That's going to be in position to draft a quarterback,
and
because they're going to be
because of
that
the
bad.
offense that was happening. It would be because the defense never improved.
It's because the defense is terrible and the offense is middling.
So how do we get the defense to
that.
get up to middling? How do we get the defense to get up to 15th? Like what happened last year, for example?
I don't know, because what I'm looking at this year is there's not a bevy of guys that are going to get healthy and make this work. The biggest problem this team has is they can't cover anyone. And there is no Shaq Griffin, who has been hurt, who's about to come off the injured list and make the cornerback position.
Oh, Trey Brown's coming back.
Again, you don't
we haven't seen him, right? So yeah, no, I know. And Jamal Adams. I mean, Jamal Adams has 9 receptions on 16 targets, 77 yards, a touchdown, a passer rating about 89.8 against him. That's not horrible. It's not great, but they have him playing off the line of scrimmage quite a bit more this year.
Mm-hmm. Because they have to.
Do they?
They can't cover. They need extra
They can't
help.
cover with Jamal Adams.
They can't cover without him. So they have him off.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
They have him off the line of scrimmage because they can't cover anyone, and they can't.
What's the best use of Jamal Adams, regardless of whether we have defensive backs or not? Just tell me straight up. What's the best use of Jamal Adams in a neutral defense?
Ideally, you want him playing near the line of scrimmage. You want him blitzing occasionally. You want him to.
Let's do that. Let's take advantage of his skills as he rushes the passer. Let's go ahead and blitz him like we did last year and see what happens.
So, but then how do you account for the fact that our cornerbacks cannot cover anyone?
You're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to live and die by some.
They can't cover a table with a tarp now.
You're going to have to listen. We're in a situation where we're 2-3. We're going to have to experiment. We're going to have to take some chances. This is now, it's over. Like the time of playing within the defense and having Jamal Adams playing a traditional free safety role because we think we need help on the back end, it's over. Like, go find somebody else to do that. You know, you've got
you got Blair, you got Neil,
Blair, you got Neil to be able to take care of some of that. You're going to have this Trey Brown kid coming in. Let's go ahead and just give it to him. Okay, we're really bad anyway. We suck on the back end. We know it. I don't know what to do about it other than let's try something different because what we've been trying does not work. Let's send Adams. Let's use his skill set in getting to the quarterback. Let's just do it. Let's stop dropping Brooks into coverage. Let's just use the players that we have in their optimal skill sets and live with the defensive backs we have.
So
maybe we go out and make a trade at the trade deadline. If we win maybe we win a couple games here and there's a chance.
Why would you give up any draft capital at this point to salvage a team? That's
if you could get control of a guy for 2 or 3 years,
that's most likely going to
like
be
we did with Diggs, for example, when we got Diggs in here. Then you go out and you make a trade that's smart. You give up a 5th round pick for a Pro Bowl level safety. That was a smart move. That was one of the best trades we've made in the last 5 years. So maybe there's something like that going on with the cornerback out there. I don't know.
Yeah, the guys that were available, like Gilmore has already been traded. Richard Sherman signed with Tampa. There were moves that to be made, but those are gone.
But right now we have Reed, Flowers, and Jones. We have Amati, we have Blair, we have Adams, we have Ryan Neal. Let's go with those guys. That's what we have. Let's let them do their job on the back end. Worry about Adams being more of the strong safety that he is and the blitzing guy that he was last year, and hope that some of those opportunities turn into turnovers, and and create some plays that way and stop teams on third down and so forth by getting those sacks or quarterback pressures. Because right now he doesn't have any. He has no sacks, no quarterback pressures, no hits through 5 games.
They're not blitzing.
He's blitzing 5.7% of the time. And last year when he was getting all those stats, he was blitzing 12.3% of the time.
So he's less than half.
Let's blitz him 12.3% of the time. That worked. I know it was kind of screwed things up with Diggs and so forth on his timing, and exposed us a little bit on the back end. We had some throws over the top kind of happen, but we have other players that are probably better in coverage than Jamal Adams to be able to go take care of some of that stuff. Jamal Adams' skill set, it belongs up at the line of scrimmage. It just does. It's just who he is. It's why we paid him money. Let's let him do his job. Let's not have him be a free safety. He's not a free safety. He's just not.
No, he's not. He's a strong safety, and he needs to be allowed to play like one. And I get that, but part of giving him the opportunity to do that is being able to cover behind it, so that way you can play with your 2 corners and your free safety as your deep. Your
well, we're gonna have to see what Trey Brown's all about. I mean, we drafted him, and we drafted him they liked him. He wasn't on our radar. He wouldn't have been our pick. He didn't fit the mold of what we were looking for in Seattle, but here he is. And now he's coming he's returning to the team, returning to practice. If you're expecting this kid to come in and be the savior, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. He hasn't even practiced. What I'm saying, Keith, is it's time, the time for
all of
trying to play who we have and go with what we've been doing is proven to be not working.
No, and I get that.
And now it's time to experiment. It's time to play players that need some opportunity to show. It's time to do some different things in conjunction with the offense and Geno Smith. Things are not great. I agree with you. The premise is crazy. Like, I'm talking crazy talk, basically, in trying to convince you that we're going to win, because it is. It would have to, all the things that I've described would have to work perfectly in order for them to win 3 out of the next 5 games.
Here's the thing. So they're right now.
But doing nothing guarantees that we will not win.
True. And no one's saying that they should do nothing. And no one's saying that they should ask Geno Smith to go be Russell Wilson, because that's not going to happen. But if Geno Smith isn't Russell Wilson, unless the coaching staff does something with the defense and gets more out of them, it doesn't matter whether the offense operates in a more efficient, even if less explosive way with Geno, because they're going to lose games anyway. Now, I will say this. This coming week, they play the Steelers, which are one of the worst offensive teams in the league. If you've watched. And they just
lost Juju Schuster-Smith for the season.
Yep, they just lost their most explosive wide receiver. Ben Roethlisberger should have retired. He's looked terrible. And so the defense is going to look significantly better this week.
So you're saying there's a chance?
No matter what.
It really does depend on opponents. I mean, let's give the Seahawks a little break here and say that the first 5 games was tough.
I'm going to say that the defense is going to look better this week. That doesn't mean they're going to be better. They're going to look better because they're playing against a terrible team. after that, they've got
we play the Jaguars, the Washington Football Club, the 49ers.
It's the
Texans, the Bears, the Lions, and the Cardinals. Those are the games. The losses.
You're out of order.
Those are, I know, but those are, I'm saying,
those are probably going to be
wins. Those are going to be wins.
Steelers, the Saints, and Jaguars before the bye. In the next 3 games, the Jaguars, if they can't beat the Jaguars even without Russell Wilson, then seriously start playing for draft picks because you're terrible. And the other 2, if they take one of those 2, they get back to 3-3 going into the bye. And you're like, all right, okay, back to 3-3, 11 games left. It's a lot of football that we played. We can, and I think that's doable. But they come out of the bye with the Packers, the Cardinals, then they get, the Washington football team, and then the 49ers again. Very easily right there, 3 more losses, and they go to 4-7. And that is the point where Russell Wilson comes back, when you're a team that's 4-7. And they would then need to run the table to get into the playoffs. So you're expecting this team at 4-7 to then run the table.
No. That would be unrealistic.
Against Texans, Rams, Bears, Lions, Cardinals.
Yes, that could happen. Actually,
it could happen.
If you're thinking about it, you've got the Cardinals in a game at the end of the year. That's the best team on that list, and you're going to face them at Arizona, where they're likely have won the division, possibly the entire NFC at that point, and they might be sitting a whole bunch of players, and the Seahawks can go get a game that they might need a hell of a lot more than Arizona at that point. So I'm saying that might be a possibility. That I can't rule that out. That would be one of those things where Russell Wilson, right? There's your factor. So Wilson also was reported this morning that he could only be out 4 weeks, possibly. Meaning that he could return before the Packers game.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Russell Wilson, dude, come on. And then, okay,
no,
so here's the reality.
He had 2 screws put into his finger and a ligament and a ligament repaired. Let's be realistic. The 4-week.
I think if we lose all 4 games or 5 games before he comes back, he's not coming back. He's not going to come back for a while.
Yeah, they'll find, he'll take his time. He'll get healthy. He'll maybe play a couple of games, against like the Texans and the Lions.
Yeah, and then we'll have a completely separate conversation about what that means.
Yeah,
because stuff will really change.
Also, you got to realize that at this point, they're 1 play away from Jake Luton.
I'm gonna finish out my thought train and close out this show on what we need to do. This team is not a Super Bowl team. Let's just be honest with everyone, with ourselves. This team is not even close to that right now. We don't have the roster. We just don't.
Not with the defense.
But we could be a wild card team and just make it fun. Whatever. I mean, it is what it is. It's not going to be a competitive playoff situation, but it'd be cool if we could kind of keep this string going of getting into the playoffs. The Seahawks need to go 8-4, in my opinion, at a minimum, to finish 10-7 overall. Mm-hmm. And get into the playoffs as the 3rd place team in the NFC West, ahead of the 49ers, to get into the wild card. In order to do that, they need to beat the Steelers, Jaguars, Washington football team, the 49ers again at home, the Texans, Bears, Lions, and the Cardinals. Now, if you take a look at that list in isolation, without the games in between, I'm saying that those games are winnable, even with Geno Smith. They just are. I mean, on paper, anything can happen, blah, 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 blah. Those are the winnable games. The losses, and one of these is possibly winnable, the Saints, Cardinals, Packers, and Rams. Those are losses. They just are. And so, to me, that's an 8-4 finish. And you could get into the playoffs, and that's how you salvage the team, and yada, yada. And once you're in the playoffs, Russell Wilson, maybe the defense comes on a little bit. anything can happen. So that's my best case scenario. I mean, that is really the best case scenario. You don't see that happening. I don't necessarily see it happening with 100% confidence. I'm just saying that it could happen. And I was trying to lay out how that could happen in this show by doing the dink dunk screen run offense and having the defense somehow improve. Maybe all it takes is that Jamal Adams move, and that reshuffles a few different things because of that, and that makes the defense better. I don't know. I don't have the answers on the defense. It seems like a big coaching situation to me more than anything, because when you look at it on paper, the players aren't terrible on paper. Like, this should be a better defense, and I'm not sure exactly why it isn't. And that's part of the thing that I'd like to solve is like, what's going on with the defense? I think the offense is kind of known, but the defense is really weird.
Luckily for us, we have another show, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in our midweek show. Is how do we make this defense, which should be significantly better than it is, how do we make it like respectable? Because right now it's not.
Or do we start to blow it all up and take advantage of the trade deadline and accumulate picks? Or will the trade deadline come too soon before we get to that point?
That's the thing is, I think the trade deadline will come at a time when this team won't know. Because especially with the Jaguars and the Steelers coming up,
unless they lose those games
and the bye week, they're going to be sitting there. I think they're going to be sitting in the bye week at 3-3, going, "Hey, we just have to hold it out a couple more weeks. We get Wilson back. We can go on a run." No, I don't think it's the worst possible situation at all. Because if they are
if you're intending on winning, it's not a problem.
If they are 3-3 and they're like, if we can hold out another week or two, we get Russell Wilson back. If the defense is showing some signs of turning it around, this offense is loaded. It really is. If the defense can turn around and be middle of the road, this is a good team that can go on a deep run in the playoffs. But they got to get Wilson healthy, and the defense has to find a way to not be terrible. And so far, they haven't given me any confidence that this particular defense is capable of not being terrible.
All right. So let's answer some questions in the next show.
Let's do that.
So wanted to mention as well, Seahawks Playbook Podcast is part of the TPPN network, the Pigskin Podcast Network, and we have a sponsor, DraftKings. You can use the promo code that you see right down there. TPPN when you place an order and all that good stuff. So follow Keith on Twitter at MyersNFL. I'm at NWCHawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com is the website. Follow us on your favorite podcast apps and subscribe on YouTube. So until next time, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at MyersNFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.